Tim Brown, former Notre Dame great, Raiders wide receiver, joining us on the show. When did you feel that there was something different going on with the game plan here, Tim?
Well, Friday morning when they came in and said we're going to change up things, and we're going to go back to what we've done all year. We're going to try and throw the ball. So it was, that was pretty obvious there was going to be a major change to the game plan at that particular time.
But you guys were a great passing team.
Yeah.
You had two Hall of Famers as wide receivers. Why would you go to a running?
Officially one, Dad.
Well, yeah, one day you'll get in. But why would you go to a running game as opposed to going what you guys did as well as anybody?
Because our offensive line averaged 350 pounds and our defensive line averaged 280. They were the quickest, fastest defense in the league at that time. So it would be a lot easier for our guys to lay on those guys and try and backpedal and stay in front of them. So as you saw in that game, it didn't work out too well trying to. Lincoln Kennedy, he said he went back and watched the game, and he said, I just want to apologize because I played one of the worst games in my career. Well, try and stay in front of Simeon Rice, I think a lot of people could say that.
Did anybody voice their concern in the moment to Bill Callahan with that new game plan?
Yeah, we all were concerned about it because, it was a drastic change. It wasn't an addition here and an addition there, but it was, deviating away from where we had started. So I think from that standpoint, it became problematic, because now, not for me, I got to run routes and catch balls. If the quarterback can get the ball to me, then I'm all good. But for Gannon, who ended up having one of the worst games in the history of the Super Bowl and in his career, and for our offensive line, it was a big change, So.
Al Davis have any role in a guy who liked to air it out?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It never came up. It didn't come up that, and maybe he wouldn't have said that anyway. He wouldn't have said, "Hey, Al wanted me to change the game plan." But that's something that we'll never know, obviously. But and it's not out of the realm of possibility that Mr. Davis could have said, scratch this, and we're gonna do what we did to get here, because I think that is something that is not only plausible but likely, because I know that is, in my 16 years there, that happened once or twice.
You have Barrett Robbins, who was diagnosed as bipolar. You put in this new game plan on Friday. Here's the all-pro center who has to make all these new calls now at the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
He goes AWOL Friday night.
Yep.
Did this have anything to do with him going to Tijuana and going on a binge to miss the Super Bowl?
We'll never know that. We'll never know the answer. Well, I shouldn't say we'll never know that. Maybe Barrett will speak on that one day. But if I know Barrett the way I did back 10 years ago, he's never going to say that was the reason why. Because I just don't think that he will admit that, he let the circumstance get to him and cause him to miss the biggest game of his career and end his football career.
But he did admit, though, that he didn't want them to change. He didn't want Callahan to change the game plan because he had to learn all these new signals and changes on Friday before the Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah, well, again, if he is saying that, then, it is what it is. But, obviously we speculated that had a big part of it, and we didn't think that, his intentions was to go off and get so inebriated that he was that he wouldn't be able to function. But I do think that he was trying to get away from the pressure that he was going to be under, and and in his particular situation with the bipolar syndrome, then that getting away ended up being a bigger deal.
He's Tim Brown, former Notre Dame star, Raiders wide receiver. The headline: Tim Brown suggests sabotage by Bill Callahan. Sabotage, strong word. What do you mean by that?
Again, I have never said that he sabotaged the game. All I'm saying is, all that was said after the game was, the question was asked, about this situation. But no one ever said, because I said on the radio show last Saturday night, that's something that could never be proven. We can't go into the mind of Bill Callahan and say, oh yeah, we knew exactly what he was thinking, what he was trying to do. All I'm saying is the question was asked. But of course, the media hears sabotage and Bill Callahan and throwing the football game. Now they're saying throwing the football game. That terminology was never used. But that wasn't the intent. My intent on bringing this up when I did, and the crazy thing is I've spoken about this for 10 years, so I don't know why last weekend this whole thing blew up. I mean, when I was on Fox, my TV show in '05, when I first retired, I told this story. So anyway, the fact of the matter is, this was all about Barrett. I mean, there were some things being said about Barrett that I felt as if I had to tell the whole story so people can at least put in context what possibly could have happened to the kid the 2 nights before the biggest game of his life. So, but I didn't say that Bill sabotaged the game. I wouldn't say that because that's not something I would ever have knowledge about. But I have to say that the word was thrown around, not just by myself, but by several folks right after the game.
Well, but you're quoted as saying we called it sabotage because Callahan and Gruden were good friends. Callahan had a big problem with the Raiders. He hated the Raiders, and so that's what I'm trying to understand. What role did Callahan play in you guys losing?
Well, he changed the game plan.
But did he do it on purpose to help John Gruden?
That's the part. That's why you can't call it sabotage there, because you don't know that. That's not, look, if I said we called it sabotage, I should have said we could have called it sabotage because it was a question. It wasn't a statement that was made. Because you cannot prove that. That's not something that can be proven, so that was not the point. The point was, when you look at the history of everything that we had gone through, it wasn't just because of that game plan that whole deal came out. People were saying what they were saying. It was a combination of things that led up to that, and that was like, oh well, now this is what we get.
Well, why did he hate the Raiders organization, but he was the head coach in the Super Bowl?
That's a question that you would have to ask Bill Callahan, because all I know is from his words that he didn't like the organization. Because he thought it was undisciplined and all this kind of thing. So so I don't know why he came there with that attitude. But when we spoke to Gruden about him, after an incident that had happened for the second time, Gruden said, "Hey, look, this is what it is. It's a great football coach. You guys just understand that this is how he thinks a little differently about this, about that. But it is what it is, and that's how we ran with it for the next 2 years."
Would the outcome have been different if John Gruden was the head coach of the Raiders in that Super Bowl?
Oh, well, yeah, certainly. One thing for sure is the defense would have known every play that we were running. Every time we went to audible, the defense wouldn't have been able to say, hey, they're throwing the ball here.
Well, how do you have a new game plan, Tim, and you keep the same audibles?
Well, when I say we went to a new game plan, the new game plan was what we had been doing. The new game plan that we had
was the old game plan.
The new game plan was the old game plan. Yeah, the new game plan initially was to run the ball. That was a game plan.
But did anybody think we should probably change our calls for audibles that Gruden is going to let this defense know?
You can do that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can't do that on Friday night. That's the issue. You try and do that if you go back to your old offense on Friday. Now you don't have time to try and put in new code words for your audibles. It's just going to be impossible. So, but hey, man, look, I'm on this, Dan, just for one thing, and look, I never called it sabotage. I think in my statement last Saturday night, I said, that's something that we can prove, but it was something that was brought up. So from that standpoint, it is what it is. Callie knows better than anybody that I was his main protector there. I was a guy who tried to come to him and diffuse every situation that we found ourselves in with him. So, I never once had a crossword with him because I was the one always in between him and everybody else, trying to be the peacemaker in the deal. So,
do you wish this? Are you glad this came out?
Look, it's been out. So when you say come out, the way it's come out, I never liked the way people, phrase words, and put things together. But at the same time, It's my recollection of the events. John Ritchie has came and said the same thing, and other folks who are less.
Jerry Rice,
but there've been other players who text me and said, I've been telling people the same thing for 10 years. Not that it was sabotage, but that the game plan changed, and the game plan changing was the big part of this deal. So I mean, this is not something that is new to the guys who were on that team, but at the same time, for folks for this to be phrased the way it's been phrased, is only going to cause issues for me and for Callahan and for everybody involved with this deal. But hopefully this thing can go, what they say, sweet in the night, or whatever they call it, and just move on. I mean, I would gladly have a conversation with Callahan about this, because, I mean, he and I could talk about things that he knows that I know.
Well, why didn't you reach out to him, or why haven't you?
The way he left the Raiders in 2003 was so tough, man, because he just left the organization just in a very, very difficult position. I mean, a lot of broken guys, a lot of guys just could not figure out what had happened over the last 16 weeks. I mean, how could we go from being in the Super Bowl to being, one of the worst teams in the NFL with basically the same personnel? How can that happen? Well, it happens because you had a lot of infighting. I mean, you had a lot of turmoil. It was just chaotic, literally from March until the end of the season, man. And so I think from that standpoint, when we heard that he was leaving, it was, he got fired and he was going to Nebraska. Okay, well, at least he was going to college, and a lot of things wasn't said at that time because, nobody wanted to hurt his career or wanted to put him in a difficult situation. His son, I forget his son's name now, but I used to warm up every day with him. He was the one who threw balls to me to get me going every day in training camp, so I always thought about that and certainly didn't want to be a part of any negativity in his son's life because, man can't work. It's a bad thing. So there were many reasons that. But when people start to talk about Barrett in such a bad way, then you have to tell the story. You have to tell the story of what possibly could have happened to this kid.
But deep down, do you think this set Barrett Robbins off? He was overwhelmed that he had a new game plan here, or what he was going to do on a Friday before Super Bowl Sunday.
Well, there's no doubt that it was angst in his mind, no doubt about it. He was having some issues with having to deal with this. I mean, he asked Callahan, not to do this because he didn't have time to get the calls right. So again, it's Friday night. And from what I knew of Barrett, Friday night was his party night anyway. So I think from that standpoint,
he took that to a new degree.
What's that?
He took that to another level.
Yeah, I mean, and why he did that, nobody knows that. But again, I in protection of him, you tell the story, and no one thinks about Barrett in this story. They only hear, Callahan and what happened, and you go from there. But again, for the 19th time. I mean, no one called this sabotage. No one said, hey, this is definitely what happened, because that's not what you...
He didn't throw the Super Bowl.
Right, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, we had to... Bottom line is, when you look at... It's like Lincoln said, there were a whole bunch of guys play bad football, including himself. I only had a couple opportunities, I had one catch and one drop, I think it was, or maybe I had another opportunity. Jerry had a pretty good game. Jerry Porter played, pretty decently. Rich, what was the reason why he played so bad? I don't know. I mean, only he can tell you that. Possibly it was that, every time he went to Gruden knew every time Gannon looked left, he was going to throw right.
You're right.
And he told the boys that, so.
Did you just try to take the spotlight off Manti Te'o, being the true being the true domer that you are? Is that what you're doing here, Tim?
These Notre Dame knuckleheads, what is wrong with these guys? They just won't do the right thing. I thought they were all about doing the right thing, man. Well, look, anybody knows me knows that I've never had a mild intent in my life, especially towards people who I've worked with, man. And there's no doubt that the same is here. And I hear Callie is pretty upset, and he's.
Are you going to reach out to him?
That may be something that has to happen at this particular point. But and I think if that was to happen, then maybe anything. He put out a statement today that leads everybody to believe that he's about to sue me, saying that this was defamatory or whatever. But at the same time, I think that if he and I were to have a conversation, I think that we can come to a mutual agreement that, what was and what is today, and, we can move on with this thing. But because, he knows that there's a lot out there. And, could Barrett Roberts have played in the game? Only he knows that at this particular point. What we were told was Barrett was safe, but was in no condition to play a football game. Well, that was, 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So it led us all to believe that he was possibly, in a mental institution or something. We had no idea where he could have possibly been at that time. So,
well, I do appreciate you coming on and clarifying this. And I know you're being inundated here, but I do.
Dan Patrick, I can let you know you are the last one that would hear my voice in regards to this situation.
This is it, huh?
Yeah, man. There's no reason to keep on with this. I can't really add anything new to it. I appreciate you allowing me to, express my opinions on this and to clarify some things. But to go any further, I think at this particular point is it just would be, it would seem as if I am trying to be vindictive or something,
yeah.
or and that's obviously not who I am. And second of all, again, that was not the intent of this whole deal. I was just trying to protect the reputation of a pretty good teammate, a pretty good football player at that particular time too, who obviously had and still has some issues. So, being that the story had been told many times, over 50 times publicly, including here in Dallas, where people are like, "Well, why everybody's tripping? We talked about this before when Callahan got hired." So.
Well, turn off your phone.
Well, hey, I got an auto reply going right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Tim. We appreciate you joining us.
Appreciate you, Dan.
All right, Tim Brown, former Notre Dame star, Raiders wide receiver.